everyone, I'm Nicole Guillaume with Guiding Echoes, the channel that is devoted to your spiritual and personal growth. Now, have you ever had a dream about someone who passed away? If so, you may have found that when you woke up, you found yourself wondering if that was real, if you really had a visitation with the spirit of that person during the dream. So in this video, I want to give you a heads up on the top 7 signs that indicate that this was in fact a dream visitation. And the reason this is important is because when we see someone in our dreams, it doesn't necessarily mean that we had an actual visitation with them. What happens is that sometimes a person can represent a very specific archetype, meaning that someone can represent something very specific in our dreams. So for example, if our Aunt Millie was very frugal with money and we're having a very tough time with money, we may fall asleep and have a dream in which we see our Aunt Millie, and we may not have any interaction with her, but the reason she popped up in that dream is because our subconscious mind is trying to send us a message that said, hey, remember how frugal your Aunt Millie was? You may want to put some of her practices into practice in your own life. So in this video, I want to give you an idea of the difference between a visitation and a projection from your subconscious mind. So in order for you to know the difference, it's really important for you to know the signs of a dream visitation. So the first and most common sign of a dream visitation is that during the dream, you will have some type of partial or full awareness. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say that your father-in-law, who passed away last June, comes to visit you in a dream. And at some time during that dream, when you're having a conversation with him, there's some type of awareness that takes place in the dream where you think to yourself, wait a second, is this real? Is this really happening? Wait a second, you passed away last June. How are we having this conversation? And the reason that awareness is important is because that type of awareness is not typical of a normal dream. And you know this, right? Every time you wake up from a dream and you think about what it is that you dreamt, there was no point during a normal dream in which you asked yourself, is this a dream? You know, I mean, that does happen occasionally, but for the most part, when we are dreaming, we lack awareness because our subconscious mind has complete control over the different projections and stories that it's trying to show us. So during a visitation, there's a certain consciousness, there's a certain awareness that expands, and we know during that dream that something is off, something isn't quite right. We're experiencing something impossible. And so that awareness comes forward, and we know that we shouldn't be speaking to this person. We know that there is something that feels a little off. So that's usually the first indication of a dream visitation. The second indication is that it feels so real. So once that awareness comes forward and you're like, wait a second, is this a dream? There's also that second impact, that second component in which everything feels so real. And the reason it will feel so real is because during the dream, there usually isn't much to indicate that it is a dream. And that's what can really throw you off when this moment of awareness hits. Now, I don't know if you've experienced this or not, but when that awareness comes that something is off, that maybe this is a dream, you kind of start looking for different things in your dream environment that are going to give you a signal that this is a dream. So maybe you look up to the sky and you just see normal clouds, normal blue sky, birds. You don't see a car flying or anything that seems out of the norm. You know, you start looking for hints in the environment. And when everything looks normal, when you're talking to your father-in-law in the living room and the living room looks exactly like your living room or a living room that you've been in your past, maybe the living room of a house that you used to live in or your father-in-law's living room, you start to really think that, oh my gosh, this is real. This feels real. So that is the second component to a dream visitation. The third sign is that the dream flows naturally and consistently. And this is really important. So let's say in the dream, you walk into the shed and you see your father-in-law working on some type of woodwork. And so you go in there, you go into the shed, and the two of you have this amazing conversation. And it just flows easily. It flows naturally. It flows the same way it would as if this was happening in real life. So again, there's no indication that anything is off. At no point during the dream does, again, a flying car come into the scene. And there's just this normal conversation that takes place between the two of you. Which leads us to the fourth point, is that there is some type of interaction between you and the person who has passed away. So this interaction is usually a conversation. This is important because this can be the difference between your subconscious mind projecting an archetype into your mind to send you a message versus this consciousness and spirit of that person coming through to you in the dream world to deliver a message. And that message could simply be, hey, I'm okay. I'm really excited to be speaking to you right now. Let's act as if everything is normal. Let's act as if I didn't pass away. So you may find that this is a very normal run-of-the-mill conversation, or there's going to be something very, very important that is delivered to you in the form of a message during the dream. So there is some type of important interaction that will take place. The next sign is that their personality is intact. So if your father-in-law was kind of stern and maybe a little off, you're going to find that in the dream, he still has those elements. He's proving to you that it is in fact him. Or maybe he was kind of jovial and sly and thought he was the funniest person on the planet and had a quick wit. Well, that's going to come through in the dream too. So whatever that person's personality type was, it's going to come through full force in the dream. And what you may find is that it's even more magnified. And what I have found during the different stories that I've heard from people who've had visitations is that there's typically a moment in the dream in which there is some type of, I want to say, physical touch involved. And that's usually a handshake, and there's this moment of softness that takes place. So if you did have someone in your life who passed away and they were stern and they were maybe a little off, they'll still come through that way, but some point during the dream, you'll see a softer side of them, and they may open up to you about something that happened during the time that they were here on Earth. Maybe they have some unresolved issues or some feelings that they need to get closure on, and so they're able to, at that point, talk to you about these sensitive topics. So there is usually a form of openness that takes place even with people who were more closed off during their lifetime here. The sixth sign, which we already kind of touched on, is that they have a message for you. They have come into your dream to share with you something that is important to them or to you. So let's get back to this example of you having money problems. We started this off saying maybe your Aunt Millie passed away and she was known for being very frugal. So if your subconscious mind projects her into your dream, but you don't have a lot of interaction with her, you don't have any interaction with her at all, again, that's your subconscious mind's way of saying, let's follow her example. She had a good idea of what she was doing, and it's time for us to take the lead. Well, it may be a dream visitation if you have that interaction with your Aunt Millie, and she starts giving you advice on how to handle your money. Or maybe she even gives you relationship advice, or she comes through to tell you what a wonderful, creative soul you are and how proud she is of you and how she wishes she had spent more time with you and made you feel more loved and more cared for when she was still here. So there's going to be some type of message that is important to you, and usually it's very relevant to the circumstances that are taking place in your life. The other message that usually comes through in a dream visitation is simply, I'm okay now. I'm doing great. You don't have to worry about me. I'm watching over you. I still exist, and I'm so excited to be here with you right now. But of course, in the context of a dream, they may tone down their excitement a little bit. They're not going to give you any indication that there's a dream. Although sometimes that does happen. I have heard of people who have had these dream visitations, and the person who came to visit them has told them, yes, this is a dream, but yes, I'm also very real, and I'm here because you're struggling with this, and I want you to know XYZ. So the message can sometimes be very blunt, and sometimes the message is kind of hidden in the context of the conversation. So once you wake up from a dream visitation and you realize that there was a conversation that took place or some type of message that was exchanged, maybe it was telepathic, maybe the person in the dream wasn't actually speaking, maybe you realized you could hear their thoughts. You want to sit down and really observe and pull apart the context of that conversation or that message so that you can find the deeper meaning. So I highly recommend that when you have a dream of someone who has passed away, that you journal that dream. Because whether it's an archetype or a visitation, there is some type of message in it that is important. Trust me on this. Your loved ones do not come through in a dream unless it is important. So write down the conversation word for word if you want to, or write down the simple message, the basics of the message that you feel are important. Okay, so our very last sign of a dream visitation is the strong emotional sense that you get after you wake up. And so you may find that once you wake up out of this dream, that you have that lump in your throat and that pit in your stomach and those tears that you're trying to blink away because it was just so surreal, because it was just so powerful. And there is something in you that knows this was real, right? So there's a very strong emotional component that stays with you once you wake up. And you'll probably find that for the next day or 2 days or maybe a few weeks will go by and this dream stays in the forefront of your mind, or maybe it's in the back of your mind, but it's something that has this very strong pull on you. So if you wake up with a very strong emotional connection to this dream and it lingers, whether it's minutes, hours, days, weeks, if it's strong, if it's in your face and you can't get away from it, this was a dream visitation. This was a dream visitation. And so those are the top 7 signs of a dream visitation. And if there is a component that I left out, if you've had a dream visitation, and there was another element that helped you to realize this was a visitation, I would love to hear what that component was. So you can put that in the comment section down below. And if you've ever had a dream visitation and it was just such a magnificent experience and you want to share it with the world, don't be shy. You can put that in the comment section down below too. We love to hear those type of stories. So if this is your first time watching one of my videos, I would like to welcome you to the Guiding Echoes community, and I'd also like to invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here on this channel, we love to talk about spiritual topics, and we love to dive deeply into those spiritual questions. So if you find that you don't really conform to any one religious belief, but you are a spiritual seeker, this is the community for you. So be sure that you hit that subscribe button. If you'd like to learn more about me, or if you'd like to schedule a one-on-one intuitive session with me, I would love to speak to you. So you can visit my website at guidingechoes.com to learn more about that and how you can set up an appointment with me. And of course, I will have a link to my website in the description area down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.